Welcome to Fairy World. The Miller's Son and the Truth Stones. There once was a miller's son named Thomas who lived in a small village by a winding river. The mill was old and made of gray stone, with a large wooden wheel that turned slowly in the water. Thomas worked there every day with his father, grinding wheat and corn into flour for the villagers. It was simple work, but Thomas did not mind it most days. Thomas had one particular talent that set him apart from other young men in the village. He was an excellent liar. Not the cruel kind of lying that hurt people, but the clever kind that got him out of trouble or made boring days more interesting. When the baker asked if Thomas had eaten one of his fresh rolls, Thomas could look him straight in the eye and say no with such conviction that the baker would apologize for even asking. When his father asked if the mill work was done, Thomas could say yes so smoothly that his father never thought to check. The lies came to Thomas as naturally as breathing. He never had to think about them. They simply appeared in his mind, fully formed and perfectly believable. Sometimes he lied for no reason at all, just to see if he could. He would tell travelers that the river ran uphill on Tuesdays, or that the old oak tree in the village square could grant wishes if you asked politely. Some people believed him, and that made Thomas smile. One autumn morning, when the leaves were turning golden red, a stranger came to the mill. He was a tall man, dressed in a coat that seemed to be made of green moss and brown bark. His eyes were bright yellow like a cat's eyes, and his smile showed too many teeth. He carried a leather bag that clinked softly with each step. "Good morning, young miller," the stranger said. His voice sounded like wind through hollow trees. "Good morning," Thomas replied, wiping flour dust from his hands. "Do you need flour?" "No," said the stranger. "I need something much more interesting. I need your lies." Thomas laughed. "My lies? What would you do with those?" The stranger set his bag down on the mill floor. "Lies are powerful things. They can start wars, end friendships, create kingdoms, and destroy lives. A good lie is worth more than gold to someone who knows how to use it. And you, Thomas, are very good at lying." Thomas felt a strange flutter in his chest. No one had ever spoken about his talent this way before. "What are you offering?" he asked. The stranger opened his bag. Inside were dozens of smooth, round stones. Each one was perfectly white and seemed to glow with a soft inner light. "These are truth stones," the stranger explained. "Each stone contains one absolute truth. When you hold a stone and speak, only truth can come from your mouth. When you hold a stone and listen, you will know if others are lying. With these stones you will never be deceived. You will always know what is real." Thomas picked up one of the stones. It was warm in his hand and felt heavier than it looked. "And you want my ability to lie in exchange?" "Yes," said the stranger. "If you agree, you will never be able to lie again. Not a small lie, not a big lie, not even a polite lie to spare someone's feelings. Only truth will come from your lips, forever and always. But you will have these stones, and truth is far more valuable than deception." Thomas thought about this. He imagined always knowing when people lied to him. He imagined the power of speaking only truth, of being trusted completely by everyone. It seemed like a worthy trade. What use were lies, really, when truth could give him so much more? "I agree," Thomas said. The stranger's smile grew wider. "Then it is done. The stranger reached out and touched Thomas's forehead with one long finger. Thomas felt something shift inside him, like a door closing in his mind. The stranger picked up his empty bag, tipped his strange hat, and walked away from the mill. He disappeared into the forest before Thomas could ask any more questions. For the rest of that day, Thomas tested his new condition. When his father asked if the millstone needed sharpening, Thomas opened his mouth to say no, as he usually would, but what came out was, "Yes, it does. I have been avoiding it because the work is difficult." His father looked surprised but nodded. "Well, thank you for your honesty. We will sharpen it tomorrow." When the baker's wife asked if her new dress looked nice, Thomas tried to say yes, but instead he said, "The color does not suit you, and the stitching on the left sleeve is uneven." The baker's wife burst into tears and hurried away. Thomas felt terrible. He had not wanted to hurt her feelings. That evening at dinner, Thomas's mother asked if he liked the soup. It was too salty, and the vegetables were overcooked, but Thomas loved his mother and wanted to make her happy. He tried to smile and compliment the meal, but the words that came out were, "It is too salty and the vegetables are mushy." His mother's face fell. His father frowned at him. "That is no way to speak to your mother," his father said. "I am sorry," Thomas said, and he was. "I cannot help it. I can only speak the truth now." His parents did not understand, and Thomas could not properly explain what he had done. That night, lying in his bed, Thomas realized that the trade might not have been as good as he thought, but he had the bag of truth stones now, and surely they would prove valuable. The next morning, Thomas decided to leave the village. His parents were upset with him, and he had offended half the village with his blunt truths. He packed a small bag with bread, cheese, and the leather pouch of truth stones. He told his parents he was going to seek his fortune, which was true, and they let him go with worried faces and tight hugs. Thomas walked along the river road, heading toward the distant mountains. He passed through several small villages, and in each one his inability to lie caused problems. In one village, he told a merchant that his antique vase was actually new and poorly made. The merchant chased him out of town. In another village, he told a lord's son that he was not clever or brave, just lucky and rich. The Lord's guards encouraged him to leave immediately. After a week of traveling, Thomas reached a vast forest. The trees here were ancient and tall, with thick trunks and branches that blocked out much of the sky. The path through the forest was narrow and winding. Thomas walked carefully, listening to the sounds of birds and the rustling of small animals in the undergrowth. As the sun began to set, Thomas realized he was lost. The path had disappeared, and all directions looked the same. He was starting to feel worried when he saw a light flickering between the trees. He walked toward it and found himself in a clearing. In the center of the clearing was a large pavilion made of red and gold silk. Lanterns hung from the posts, casting warm light over the area, and sitting in a circle around a fire were foxes. Not ordinary foxes, but foxes the size of large dogs, with fur in shades of red, silver, and black. They wore small vests and jackets, and some had spectacles perched on their snouts. They were speaking to each other in clear, human voices. Thomas stopped at the edge of the clearing, too surprised to move. One of the foxes, a large red one with a white-tipped tail, noticed him. "Well, well," the fox said, A human. How interesting. Come forward, young man. We do not bite unless given good reason. Thomas stepped into the clearing. All the foxes turned to look at him with their bright, intelligent eyes. "Welcome to the court of foxes," said the red fox. "I am Lord Russet, chief judge of these woods. Who are you, and what brings you to our territory?" "My name is Thomas," he said. "I am lost. I did not mean to intrude." "Lost, are you?" said a silver fox with a sly smile. "How unfortunate! You see, human, there is a law in this forest. Any human who enters our territory must participate in the trial of riddles. If you win, we will guide you safely out of the forest and give you a gift. If you lose, you must serve us for 7 years. Thomas felt a chill run down his spine. That does not seem fair. I did not know about this law. "Ignorance of the law is no excuse," said a small black fox wearing spectacles. "Those are the rules. They have always been the rules." Lord Russet nodded. "However, we are not unreasonable. The trial is not impossible. You must answer 3 riddles correctly and ask us 3 riddles that we cannot answer. Simple enough for a clever human." Thomas wanted to argue, wanted to find a way out, but he knew that with his inability to lie, he could not talk his way free, and he had nowhere else to go in these dark woods. "I accept," he said. The foxes yipped and chattered with excitement. They arranged themselves in a semicircle, with Lord Russet in the center. Thomas stood before them, his heart beating fast. "I will ask the first riddle," Lord Russet said. "Listen carefully. I have cities but no houses, forests but no trees, and water but no fish. What am I?" Thomas thought hard. Cities without houses, forests without trees, water without fish. After a moment, he understood. "A map," he said. The foxes murmured their approval. "Correct," Lord Russet said. The silver fox spoke next. "I speak without a mouth and hear without ears. I have no body, but come alive with wind. What am I?" This was easier. "An echo," Thomas answered. "Correct again," the silver fox said, looking less pleased. The black fox with spectacles adjusted them on his snout. "The more you take, the more you leave behind. What am I?" "Footsteps," Thomas said. The foxes looked at each other. Lord Russet nodded slowly. 3 for 3. Well done. Now you must ask us 3 riddles. If we cannot answer even one, you win." Thomas reached into his pocket and felt the truth stones there. An idea began to form in his mind. He pulled out one stone and held it in his palm. "Here is my first riddle," Thomas said. "I am something that this fox here has done." He pointed at a young red fox near the back. "I happened 3 days ago. I involve a chicken and a fence. What am I?" The foxes looked confused. Lord Russet frowned. "That is not a proper riddle. You're asking us to guess a specific event that we have no way of knowing." "Is it not a riddle if you cannot answer it?" Thomas asked. He held the truth stone tighter and spoke to the young fox. 3 days ago, you stole a chicken from a nearby farm. You knocked over a fence to get to it. Am I right?" The young fox's eyes went wide. The other foxes turned to stare at him. "How did you know that?" the young fox squeaked. The truth stone in Thomas's hand grew warm. He knew with absolute certainty that the young fox was telling the truth about his surprise, and Thomas knew that his own statement had been true as well. Lord Russet's eyes narrowed. "What trick is this?" "No trick," Thomas said, and it was the truth. "Only a riddle you could not answer. That is one." The foxes murmured and whispered among themselves. They did not look happy, but they could not argue with the rules. "Continue," Lord Russet said coldly. Thomas pointed at the silver fox. My second riddle is this. I am this fox's greatest fear. I visit her in dreams. I have wings, but am not a bird. What am I? The foxes tried to answer. They guessed owls, bats, dragons, and a dozen other things. Each time Thomas said, No, that is not correct. Finally, Lord Russet said, We cannot answer. What is the solution? Thomas looked at the silver fox. You are afraid of moths, large moths specifically. When you were young, one flew into your den, and you have been frightened of them ever since. Am I right? The silver fox looked away, her ears flat against her head. Yes, she whispered, but how could you possibly know that? That is two riddles you could not answer, Thomas said. The truth stone was very warm now, almost hot. The foxes were no longer amused or excited. They looked angry and unsettled. Lord Russet stood up, his tail lashing behind him. One more riddle, human. Choose carefully. Thomas took a breath. He had won, but something felt wrong. The foxes were staring at him with hostile eyes. He had used the truth stone to invade their privacy, to expose their secrets. It had been effective, but it had also been cruel. Still, he needed to finish this. He pointed at Lord Russet himself. My final riddle is this. I am something that you, Lord Russet, want more than anything else in the world. I am not gold or power. I am not wisdom or long life. I am something you lost, and you think about it every single day. What am I? Lord Russet's expression changed. The anger drained away, replaced by something sadder and deeper. The other foxes went quiet. Thomas held the truth stone and felt its warmth spreading up his arm. He could sense the truth of Lord Russet, could feel it like a shape forming in the darkness. And suddenly he knew. Your sister, Thomas said softly. You had a sister, a littermate. She left the forest 10 years ago to explore the human world, and she never came back. You do not know if she is alive or dead. You think about her every single day and wish you could see her again just once to know she is all right. The clearing was completely silent. Lord Russet stood very still, his eyes fixed on Thomas. The other foxes looked at their leader with surprise and sympathy. Am I right? Thomas asked, though he already knew the answer. Yes, Lord Russet said quietly. His voice was different now, smaller. You're right. Thomas put the truth stone back in his pocket. Then I have won. 3 riddles you could not answer. Lord Russet sat down slowly. He suddenly looked much older. Yes, you have won. By the rules of the trial, you are free to go, and we owe you a gift. He did not sound happy about it. Thomas felt a weight in his chest. He had won, but it did not feel like a victory. He looked at the foxes around the clearing. They were no longer playful or mischievous. They looked wary and hurt, as if he had done something terrible. I am sorry, Thomas said. I did not mean to hurt you. I only wanted to win the trial. You used truth as a weapon, said the black fox with spectacles. You took our private thoughts, our secret fears and sorrows, and you exposed them. That is what your magic does, is it not? It shows you truths that should remain hidden. Thomas wanted to argue, but he could only speak the truth. Yes, he admitted, that is what the truth stones do. They show me absolute truth, even truths that others want to keep private. That is a terrible power, the silver fox said, more terrible than any lie. Lord Russet stood up again. He looked very tired. You have won your freedom, Thomas, and as promised, we will give you a gift. But first, answer me this. Why did you trade away your ability to lie? Thomas thought about his answer. I thought truth was better than deception. I thought that always knowing the truth and always speaking the truth would make me wise and powerful. I thought lies were the problem. And now? Lord Russet asked. Now I am not so sure, Thomas said. I have hurt people with my truths. I have invaded privacy and exposed secrets. People do not like me anymore. And tonight I used truth to win a contest, but I did it in a way that caused pain. The stranger who gave me the truth stones said that lies could start wars and destroy lives. But I am learning that truth can do the same thing. Lord Russet nodded slowly. You are beginning to understand. Truth and lies are not opposites, young human. They are two sides of the same coin. Both can help or harm, depending on how they are used. A lie can spare someone's feelings or protect them from danger. A truth can heal a wound or tear a friendship apart. What matters is not whether you speak truth or lies, but whether you speak with kindness and wisdom. Thomas felt something shift inside him, the same feeling he had experienced when the stranger took his ability to lie. But this was different. This was not a door closing, but a window opening. I understand, Thomas said, or at least I'm starting to. Lord Russet walked closer to Thomas. Your gift is this, he said. I will send you to someone who can help you, someone who understands the balance between truth and lies better than anyone else in the world. But I warn you, the journey will not be easy, and the lesson may be harder than you expect. I accept, Thomas said. Lord Russet turned to the other foxes. Bring the mirror. 2 foxes disappeared into the pavilion and returned carrying a large mirror in an ornate frame. The glass was dark and did not reflect the firelight. They set it up in front of Thomas. Step through, Lord Russet said. It will take you where you need to go. Thomas looked at the dark mirror. He could not see his reflection, only darkness. He took a breath, clutched his bag with the remaining truth stones, and stepped forward. The world dissolved into shadows and silence. Thomas felt as if he were falling, but also floating. Time seemed to stretch and compress. Then, suddenly, his feet touched solid ground again. He was standing in a garden. It was night, and the moon was full and bright overhead. The garden was filled with strange plants that Thomas had never seen before, flowers that glowed with their own light, trees with silver bark, bushes covered in fruits that looked like gems, and in the center of the garden stood a cottage made of white stone with a roof of blue tiles. Thomas walked toward the cottage. Before he could knock, the door opened. A woman stood in the doorway. She was neither young nor old, with long hair that might have been brown or black or even dark blue in the moonlight. She wore a simple gray dress and held a cup of tea in her hands. Hello, Thomas, she said. I have been expecting you. My name is Vera. Please, come inside. Thomas entered the cottage. The interior was warm and cozy, with a fire burning in the hearth and shelves filled with books and strange objects. Vera gestured to a chair, and Thomas sat down. She poured him a cup of tea from a pot on the table. Lord Russet sent you to me, Vera said. It was not a question. Yes, Thomas said. He said you could help me. He said you understand the balance between truth and lies. Vera smiled. That is because I am the one who created the truth stones, and I am the one who sent the stranger to offer them to you. Thomas nearly dropped his teacup. You? Why? Why would you do that? Because you needed to learn a lesson, Vera said simply. You were a talented liar, Thomas, but you had no respect for the power of your lies. You lied without thinking, without considering the consequences. You needed to understand what it means to live without the ability to deceive. It has been horrible, Thomas said. I have hurt people. I have made enemies. I cannot even tell a kind lie to spare someone's feelings. Yes, Vera said, and that has been difficult. But you have also learned something, have you not? Thomas thought about the baker's wife, his mother, the foxes in the forest. I have learned that truth can be cruel, that sometimes honesty causes more harm than a gentle lie would. Exactly, Vera said. Now, tell me about the truth stones. How have you used them? Thomas explained what had happened in the court of foxes, how he had used the stones to see into the foxes' secrets and win the trial. As he spoke, he felt ashamed. I use them as weapons, he said. I use truth to invade privacy and expose things that should have remained hidden. It was effective, but it was wrong. Vera nodded. The truth stones show absolute truth. They do not care about context or kindness or privacy. They simply reveal what is. That can be useful in some situations, but it can also be dangerous. Absolute truth is not always good, just as absolute honesty is not always kind. I am starting to understand that, Thomas said, but what do I do now? I cannot lie. I am bound by the trade I made. Vera set down her teacup. That is why I brought you here. I am going to give you a choice, Thomas. You can keep things as they are. You will never lie again, and you will have the truth stones to help you navigate the world. Or you can break the bargain. Break it? How? The stranger who came to you was bound by rules, as all such creatures are. The bargain can be broken if you can prove that you have learned what you needed to learn. If I judge that you understand the balance between truth and lies, I can restore your ability to deceive. But there is a cost. What cost? Thomas asked. You must give up the truth stones, Vera said. You cannot have both. You must choose between the ability to lie and the ability to always know the truth. You cannot have both powers, because that would make you too dangerous. Someone who can lie perfectly and always know when others are lying would be a tyrant, whether they meant to be or not. Thomas looked down at his tea. The liquid was golden and smelled like honey and herbs. He thought about everything that had happened since he made the trade. He thought about the pain he had caused with his blunt truths. He thought about how he had violated the fox's privacy. He thought about the stranger's words, that lies could start wars and destroy lives. But he also thought about kind lies, about telling his mother that her soup was good to make her smile, about telling the baker's wife that her dress was lovely to brighten her day, about the small harmless lies that made life gentler and kinder. And he thought about the truth stones, about the power to always know what was real. That was valuable too, to never be deceived, to always see through trickery and manipulation. There was safety in that. What would you choose? Thomas asked Vera. Vera smiled sadly. I cannot choose for you, Thomas. This is your lesson, not mine. But I will tell you this. I created the truth stones because I thought absolute truth was the answer to the world's problems. I thought that if everyone knew the truth all the time, there would be no war, no crime, no suffering. But I was wrong. I discovered that absolute truth is just as dangerous as unchecked deception. People need privacy. People need small kindnesses. People need the freedom to keep some things to themselves. When I realized this, I stopped making truth stones. The ones you have are the last ones in existence. Thomas picked up the leather pouch from his pocket. He could feel the stones inside, smooth and warm. He opened the pouch and poured them out onto the table. There were 27 stones left, each one glowing softly in the firelight. "These stones have shown me terrible things," Thomas said slowly. "They have shown me secrets that I had no right to know. They have given me power, but it is the wrong kind of power. It is the power to invade and expose and hurt. I thought I wanted to always know the truth, but I realize now that some things are meant to be private. Some things are meant to be hidden, not because they are shameful, but because they are personal." He pushed the stones across the table toward Vera. "I do not want them anymore. I want my ability to lie back, but not so I can deceive people for my own gain. I want it back so I can choose when to tell the truth and when to tell a kind lie. I want the responsibility of making that choice myself." Vera reached across the table and touched Thomas's hand. He felt that same strange sensation again, like a door opening inside him. Something that had been locked away flowed back into him, filling empty spaces he had not realized were there. "It is done," Vera said. "You can lie." "Again, Thomas. But you have also learned when not to lie, and that is the greater skill. Use your gift wisely." Thomas felt different. He felt complete in a way he had not felt since the stranger took his ability to lie. But he also felt changed. He was not the same person who had made the trade in the mill. He was wiser now, and sadder, and more careful. "Thank you," he said to Vera. She smiled. "You are welcome. Now you should rest. In the morning, I will send you home." Vera showed Thomas to a small bedroom in the cottage. The bed was soft, and the blankets were warm. Thomas lay down and closed his eyes. He expected to fall asleep immediately, but his mind was too full of thoughts. He thought about the foxes and wondered if they were all right. He thought about Lord Russet and his lost sister. He thought about the lies he had told before and the truths he had spoken after. He thought about the balance between the two and how hard it was to know which to choose in any given moment. Eventually, he did fall asleep. He dreamed of the mill and the river, of his mother and father, of the village he had left behind. He dreamed of the stranger in the moss and bark coat, and of the foxes in their red and gold pavilion. And he dreamed of truth stones dissolving into light, their power released back into the world where it could do no more harm. When Thomas woke up, it was morning. Sunlight streamed through the window of the cottage. He got out of bed and walked into the main room. Vera was there, preparing breakfast. She had set out bread and honey and fresh fruit. "Good morning," she said. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes," Thomas said. Then he paused. He could have lied and said he slept well, even if he had not. He had his ability back, but he found that he did not want to lie, not about this. "Actually, it took me a while to fall asleep. I had a lot to think about, but once I slept, it was restful." Vera nodded approvingly. "Honesty suits you. Not absolute honesty, but chosen honesty." They ate breakfast together. The bread was warm and the honey was sweet. Thomas felt stronger than he had in weeks. After breakfast, Vera led Thomas out into the garden. In the daylight, it was even more beautiful than at night. The glowing flowers had closed their petals, but other flowers had opened, displaying colors that Thomas could not name. Birds sang in the silver-barked trees. Vera stopped in front of a wooden gate that Thomas had not noticed the night before. Beyond the gate was a dirt road that looked familiar, though Thomas could not say why. "This gate will take you back to your village," Vera said. "You have been gone for 2 weeks, but no time has passed at home. When you walk through, you will arrive at the mill at dawn, before anyone else wakes. You can return to your life." Thomas looked at the gate. He should have felt relieved, but instead he felt uncertain. "I do not know if I want to return to my old life," he said. "I am different now. I do not know if I fit there anymore." "You are different," Vera agreed, "but that does not mean you do not belong. Your parents miss you, the village needs you, and you need to practice what you have learned. You cannot do that by running away." Thomas knew she was right. He had run away from the village because his inability to lie had made things difficult. But the solution was not to hide. The solution was to go back and do better. "What about the foxes?" Thomas asked. "I hurt them. Should I apologize?" "They will recover," Vera said. "Foxes are resilient creatures. But if you want to make amends, you can do something for Lord Russet." "What?" Vera reached into her pocket and pulled out a small silver compass. "This compass will always point toward what you're looking for, as long as you know what that is. Give it to Lord Russet. Tell him it will help him find his sister, if she can be found. Tell him I am sorry for what you did, and that truth should be used more carefully." Thomas took the compass. It was cool in his hand and surprisingly heavy. "I will give it to him. Thank you, Vera, for everything." Vera smiled. "You're welcome, Thomas. Now go. Live your life. Lie when you must. Tell the truth when you can, and always try to be kind. That is the best any of us can do." Thomas hugged her, then opened the gate and stepped through. The world shifted and blurred. For a moment, Thomas was nowhere, suspended between places. Then his feet touched solid ground, and he was standing outside his father's mill. The sky was gray with early dawn. The river rushed past, turning the mill wheel. Everything was exactly as he had left it. Thomas stood there for a moment, breathing in the familiar smell of water and stone and flour. He was home. He was changed, but he was home. Before going inside, Thomas turned and walked into the forest. He followed paths he remembered from childhood, deeper into the woods than he had gone before. He walked for an hour, maybe 2, until he found the clearing with the red and gold pavilion. The foxes were there, sleeping in a pile near the dead fire. As Thomas approached, Lord Russet lifted his head. His eyes went sharp and wary when he recognized Thomas. "You," Lord Russet said. The other foxes woke and scrambled to their feet, forming a defensive line. "I came to apologize," Thomas said. He held up his hands to show he meant no harm. "What I did was wrong. I used truth as a weapon. I invaded your privacy and exposed your secrets. I am sorry. I was so focused on winning that I did not think about the harm I was causing." Lord Russet studied him for a long moment. "You can lie again," he observed. "I can tell. The magic is gone." "Yes," Thomas said. "I gave back the truth stones. I learned that absolute truth is not always good. I learned that some things should remain private. I learned that winning is not worth it if you have to be cruel." The silver fox stepped forward. "Why should we believe you? You could be lying now." I could be, Thomas admitted, but I am not. I am telling you the truth because I choose to, not because I am forced to. That is what I learned. The choice matters. Honesty without choice is just another form of tyranny. The foxes looked at each other. Something passed between them, some silent communication. Finally, Lord Russet nodded. We accept your apology, Thomas. You have learned your lesson. That is more than most humans ever do. Thomas pulled out the silver compass and held it out to Lord Russet. This is for you. It was given to me by the woman who made the truth stones. She said to tell you that it will help you find your sister, if she can be found. And she said she is sorry for what I did. Lord Russet took the compass carefully in his mouth, then set it down on the ground. He looked at it for a long time. When he looked back at Thomas, his eyes were bright with something that might have been tears. Thank you, Lord Russet said softly. This is a great gift, greater than you know. I hope you find her, Thomas said. I hope she is well. So do I, said Lord Russet. Thomas bowed to the foxes, then turned and walked back through the forest. Behind him, he heard the foxes beginning to discuss the compass, their voices excited and hopeful. It made him feel a little better about what he had done. When Thomas returned to the mill, the sun was fully up. His mother was in the kitchen, preparing breakfast. His father was checking the millstone. They both looked up when Thomas entered, and his mother dropped the spoon she was holding. "Thomas!" she cried. She ran to him and hugged him tightly. "Where have you been? We have been so worried." "I have been on a journey," Thomas said. "I had to learn something important, but I am back now, and I am not leaving again." His father came over and put a hand on Thomas's shoulder. "You look different," he said, "older somehow." "I am different," Thomas said. "I have learned some difficult lessons, and I owe both of you an apology. Before I left, I said some unkind things, things that were true but cruel. I am sorry for that." His mother pulled back and looked at him. "Your words hurt," she admitted, "but we understand. Sometimes young people need to find their own way. We are just glad you are home." "About the soup," Thomas said. "It was too salty that night, but most nights your soup is wonderful. You are a good cook, Mother. I should have said so more often." His mother smiled, her eyes wet with tears. "Thank you, Thomas." Over the following days, Thomas settled back into life at the mill. He worked with his father, ground flour for the villagers, and tried to repair the relationships he had damaged before he left. It was not always easy. He had to apologize to many people. He had to explain as best he could what had happened to him. When the baker's wife asked about her dress again, Thomas thought carefully before answering. He could tell her the brutal truth as he had done before, or he could lie and say it was perfect. But he chose a middle path. "The color is not my favorite," he said, "but it suits you well, and you look happy wearing it. That is what matters most." The baker's wife smiled, satisfied with the answer. It was not a lie, but it was not cruel either. It was the truth, shaped with kindness. Thomas practiced this balance every day. Sometimes he told the full truth. Sometimes he told a small, kind lie. And sometimes he found a way to be honest without being hurtful. It was harder than simply lying or simply being truthful. It required thought and care and wisdom. But Thomas found that he preferred it this way. One day, a few months after his return, a young woman came to the mill. She was beautiful, with long dark hair and clever eyes. She introduced herself as Marina and said she was passing through on her way to the city. "I heard there was a good miller here," she said. "I need flour for my journey." Thomas measured out the flour and wrapped it for her. As he worked, Marina watched him with interest. "You are the miller's son," she said. "I heard an interesting story about you in the village. They said you once could not tell a lie, but now you can. They said you went on a strange journey and came back changed. Is it true?" Thomas could have denied it. He could have lied and said it was just a silly rumor, but he found that he wanted to be honest with this woman. "It is true," he said. "I traded my ability to lie for the power to always know the truth, but I learned that neither extreme is good. Truth and lies both have their place. What matters is using them wisely and kindly." Marina smiled. "That is a wise lesson. I know something about that myself." "What do you mean?" Thomas asked. Marina leaned closer and lowered her voice. "I am a storyteller. I travel from town to town telling tales. Some of my stories are true, some are lies, some are a mixture of both. The best stories always are. People do not come to me for absolute truth. They come for stories that feel true, even if they are not. Stories that teach lessons or bring comfort or simply entertain." Thomas had never thought about stories that way before. "So you think lies can be good if they are told in the right way?" "I think lies, like truths, are tools," Marina said. "A hammer can build a house or break a window. It depends on who is using it and why. The same is true of truth and lies. Neither is good or evil by itself. What matters is the intention behind them and the skill with which they are used." Thomas found himself smiling. "I think I am still learning that lesson, but I am getting better at it." Marina picked up her bag of flour. "Well, good luck with your learning, Thomas the miller's son. Perhaps I will come through this village again someday, and you can tell me how your story ends." "Perhaps," Thomas said. "I would like that." Marina left, and Thomas watched her go. He felt something stir in his chest, but he was not sure what it was. Hope, maybe, or just the simple pleasure of meeting someone who understood. Years passed. Thomas continued to work at the mill, and eventually his father grew old and retired. Thomas took over the mill completely. He became known throughout the region as an honest miller who was always fair in his dealings. People trusted him, but they also liked him because he knew how to temper his honesty with kindness. Thomas never married, though he had opportunities. He found that he was content with his life as it was. He had his work, his parents, his friends in the village, and sometimes on quiet nights he would take walks in the forest, and sometimes he would find the clearing where the foxes held their court. Lord Russet had found his sister. She had been living in a city far to the south, working as a seamstress. She had not returned to the forest because she loved her new life, but she had not forgotten her brother either. Lord Russet traveled to visit her several times a year, and he was happy in a way he had not been before. The foxes always welcomed Thomas when he visited. They did not hold grudges, and they appreciated that he had apologized and made amends. Sometimes they would still hold trials of riddles, but now Thomas participated for fun, not because he was forced to. He won some and lost some, and he found that losing did not bother him anymore. One evening, when Thomas was middle-aged and his hair was starting to turn gray, a familiar figure appeared at the mill. It was the stranger in the moss and bark coat. the one who had first offered him the truth stones. Thomas had not seen the stranger in decades, and his first instinct was anger. But then he remembered all that he had learned, and the anger faded. "Hello," Thomas said. "I did not expect to see you again." The stranger smiled his too wide smile. "I came to see how you turned out. You were an interesting project." "A project?" Thomas felt a flicker of irritation. "Is that all I was to you?" "Not just to me," the stranger said. "To Vera as well. She asked me to find someone who needed to learn the lesson you learned. You were perfect, a talented liar who had no respect for the power of his lies. We thought that forcing you to speak only truth would teach you the value of both honesty and deception." "It did," Thomas said, "but it also hurt people. It hurt me. Was that necessary?" The stranger tilted his head. "Growth is often painful. Lessons are often hard. If I had simply told you that truth and lies both have their place, would you have believed me?" Thomas thought about this. "No," he admitted, "I would not have. I had to learn it myself, through experience." "Exactly," said the stranger. "So yes, it was painful, but you survived. More than that, you thrived. You became wise. That was the goal." Thomas looked at the stranger for a long moment. Then he said, "I forgive you, and I thank you. I did not like what you did, but I understand why you did it, and I am better for it, even if the path was difficult." The stranger looked surprised. "That is gracious of you." "It is the truth," Thomas said. Then he smiled. "Or maybe it is a lie. Maybe I am still angry with you, and I'm just saying what I think I should say. You will never know for certain, will you? That is the interesting thing about having the ability to lie. Even when I tell the truth, there is always the possibility that I am deceiving you. You have to trust me or not. The choice is yours." The stranger laughed, a sound like wind through dead leaves. "You have learned well, Thomas. Vera will be pleased." "Is she still alive?" Thomas asked. "It has been many years." "Vera is always alive," the stranger said. "She is like me. We do not age the way humans do. She will be watching over the world long after you are gone." Thomas nodded. He was not surprised. There had always been something eternal about Vera. The stranger tipped his strange hat. "Goodbye, Thomas. I do not think we will meet again, but I am glad our paths crossed, even if it was difficult for you." "Goodbye," Thomas said. The stranger walked away from the mill and disappeared into the forest, just as he had all those years ago. Thomas watched him go, then returned to his work. The years continued to pass. Thomas grew old. His hair turned completely white, and his hands became rough and gnarled from decades of work. His parents passed away, first his father, then his mother. He buried them in the village cemetery and mourned them deeply. But he was not alone. He had friends in the village, and he had the foxes in the forest. And sometimes Marina the storyteller would pass through town. She too had grown older, but she was still beautiful and clever. She would stay at the inn and tell stories in the evening, and Thomas would always attend. After one of her performances, Marina sat with Thomas and shared a cup of wine. "You never married," she observed. "Why not?" Thomas thought about how to answer. He could give her a simple lie or a complicated truth. Instead, he chose honesty. "I never found the right person," he said, "and I was content with my life as it was. I did not need a wife to be happy, though I would have welcomed one if the right person had come along." Marina nodded. "I am the same. I never married because I love my freedom too much. The road is my home, and stories are my children. We are alike in that way, Thomas said. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the fire in the hearth, and Thomas thought that maybe this was enough. Maybe this was what happiness looked like. Good work, true friends, and the wisdom to know the difference between truth and lies. When Thomas was very old, so old that he could no longer work the mill and had to hire a young man to help him, he had a dream. In the dream, he was young again, standing in the mill on the day the stranger first appeared. But this time, when the stranger offered the trade, Thomas refused. "No," Dream Thomas said, "I will keep my ability to lie, but I will use it more carefully. I will think before I speak. I will consider whether my words will help or harm. I do not need magic stones to teach me that. I can learn it on my own." The stranger smiled and nodded. "A wise choice," he said, and disappeared. Thomas woke from the dream feeling peaceful. He realized that he had finally, truly learned the lesson, not because he had lived through the experience of losing his ability to lie, but because he had integrated that experience into who he was. The lesson was not just in his mind now, it was in his bones, in his heart, in every word he spoke. A few days later, Thomas took a walk into the forest. It was a beautiful autumn day, much like the day when he had first made the trade with the stranger. The leaves were gold and red, and the air was crisp and clean. He found the clearing where the foxes held their court. The pavilion was still there, though it looked older and more worn. Lord Russet was there, very old now, his muzzle gray and his movements slow, but his eyes were still bright. "Thomas," Lord Russet said, "it has been a while since you visited." "I have been feeling my age," Thomas said, "but I wanted to see you one more time." The old fox nodded. "You're near the end of your journey." "Yes," Thomas said. There was no point in denying it. "I can feel it, but I am not afraid. I have lived a good life. I have learned what I needed to learn." Lord Russet stood up slowly and walked over to Thomas. "You have indeed. You have become wise, Thomas. That is more than most humans achieve. I am glad our paths crossed, even though our first meeting was painful." "So am I," Thomas said. "Tell me, did you ever learn to balance truth and lies as I did?" Lord Russet made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Foxes are natural liars and tricksters. We have always known how to balance truth and deception. But you taught me something else. You taught me that even tricksters can be hurt by truth and that privacy is valuable. That was a lesson I needed." "Then we taught each other," Thomas said. "That seems right." Thomas sat down on the ground, his old bones creaking. Lord Russet lay down next to him. They sat together in the clearing, watching the autumn leaves fall from the trees. "What do you think happens after we die?" Thomas asked. "Is there another place, another life?" "I do not know," Lord Russet said, "but I think there must be something. Energy does not disappear. It only changes form. Perhaps we change form too." "That is a comforting thought," Thomas said. They sat in silence for a while. Then Thomas said, "If I could go back and make the trade again, knowing what I know now, I do not think I would. The lesson was valuable, but the cost was high. I hurt people. I invaded privacy. I used truth as a weapon. Those are things I regret, even though I learned from them." "Regret is part of wisdom," Lord Russet said. "If you had no regrets, you would have learned nothing. Thomas nodded. That was true, he supposed. As the sun began to set, Thomas stood up. His body ached, but his heart felt light. "Thank you, old friend," he said to Lord Russet, "for everything." "Thank you," Lord Russet replied, "for the compass, for the apology, and for your friendship. May your journey be peaceful, Thomas." Thomas walked home through the darkening forest. When he reached the mill, the young man he had hired was closing up for the day. "Good evening, sir," the young man said. "How was your walk?" "It was good," Thomas said. "Very good. I am tired now. I think I will rest." Thomas went inside, ate a simple dinner, and lay down in his bed. He felt a deep weariness in his bones, but also a deep contentment. He had lived a good life. He had learned important lessons. He had tried to be kind and honest and wise. As he closed his eyes, he thought about truth and lies one last time. He thought about how he had spent his youth lying without thinking, and how he had spent a period of his life unable to lie at all. And he thought about all the years since, when he had carefully chosen when to tell the truth and when to tell a kind lie. The balance had not always been easy to find. He had made mistakes, but he had tried, and that was what mattered. Thomas took a deep breath and let it out slowly, and then, peacefully, his long journey came to an end. In the forest, Lord Russet felt the moment of Thomas's passing. He stood in the clearing, looking up at the stars, and howled once in tribute to his friend. The other foxes joined him, their voices rising together in a song of mourning and celebration. In a cottage in a magical garden, Vera paused in her work and smiled. "Well done, Thomas," she whispered to the night air. "You learned well. Rest now." And in towns and villages across the region, people who had known Thomas heard the news and mourned him. They told stories about the honest miller who had always been fair, who had always been kind, who had somehow known exactly when to tell the truth and when to spare someone's feelings with a gentle lie. He was a wise man, they said to each other. He understood something important about truth and lies, about honesty and kindness. We are better for having known him. And perhaps, in the end, that was the real lesson. Not that truth was better than lies, or that lies were better than truth, but that wisdom lay in knowing which to choose, and when, and how, and that the choice should always be guided by kindness, not by cruelty or selfishness or pride. Thomas had learned that lesson the hard way, and in learning it, he had become someone worth remembering. The end.